There is an oil available for $3 at any health food store in America that eliminates fine lines, fills deep wrinkles from the inside out, and restores the smooth, plump surface of skin that has been thinning and creasing for years without a needle, without a clinic, and without a single synthetic compound touching your face. One bottle treats your entire face and neck every night for 3 to 4 months. It works by penetrating the full depth of the dermis and directly triggering the skin's own collagen and elastin production at the fibroblast level. This is the same cellular mechanism that a $1,500 Botox treatment attempts to simulate by paralyzing the muscles underneath instead of addressing the tissue itself. It also floods the skin with a fatty acid so structurally identical to the skin's own natural lipids that the dermis absorbs it completely within minutes, rebuilding the moisture reservoir that keeps skin cells plump and wrinkle-resistant from within. North African women have used this oil for over 3,000 years. Moroccan Berber communities passed the cold pressing method from mother to daughter across 100 generations. A clinical study published in the Journal of Cosmetic Dermatology in 2015 documented statistically significant reductions in wrinkle depth, skin roughness, and loss of elasticity after 60 days of topical application. That study was peer-reviewed, published, and cited in subsequent dermatology research, and the global Botox and aesthetic filler industry, worth $9.4 billion in annual revenue in 2023, has never once acknowledged its existence in a consumer-facing publication, a clinic brochure, or a dermatologist consultation. They did not stop recommending this oil because it failed. They stopped because it worked too well. An oil that costs $3 and permanently rebuilds skin structure cannot sustain a procedure that bills $400 every 3 to 4 months for the rest of a patient's life. And what cannot sustain that billing cycle cannot sustain that empire. This is the story of the cheapest wrinkle treatment ever documented and the industry that prayed you would never find this video. Now let me take you back to where this story truly begins. The year is approximately 1000 BC, and we are standing in the coastal scrublands of what is now southwestern Morocco at the edge of the region, where the Atlas Mountains descend toward the Atlantic. Here in a landscape of intense sun, salt wind, and dry heat that would destroy unprotected skin within a generation. The indigenous Berber women of the Amazigh people have developed something that no other culture on Earth has independently replicated, because no other culture on Earth has access to the tree that makes it possible, the Argania spinosa, the argan tree. A species so ancient it predates the last ice age and so geographically restricted that it grows naturally in only one place on the entire surface of the planet, a 700,000 hectare belt of semi-arid scrubland in the Souss Massa region of Morocco. Berber women cracked the extraordinarily hard outer shells of argan fruits by hand, extracted the kernels inside, cold-pressed those kernels between flat stones, and collected the golden oil that ran out. They applied it to their faces every morning, they applied it to the faces of their daughters, and their daughters applied it to the faces of their daughters. For 3,000 years in the harshest UV environment in the Mediterranean world, Berber women maintained skin that showed a fraction of the wrinkling and structural deterioration that comparable sun exposure caused in every other population on Earth. Medieval Arab geographers who traveled through the region in the 10th and 11th centuries wrote of the Amazigh women's skin with documented astonishment. Portuguese explorers who made contact with Moroccan coastal communities in the 15th century recorded that women of advanced age in the region showed skin that appeared, by European standards, decades younger than their years. This was not genetics, it was chemistry applied every morning from a cold-pressed bottle that cost the equivalent of nothing. Here is exactly what's happening inside your skin when this oil is applied. Argan oil is composed of approximately 80% unsaturated fatty acids, with oleic acid and linoleic acid as its primary components. Linoleic acid is the specific fatty acid that forms the structural backbone of the skin's own lipid barrier, the invisible protective layer that keeps moisture locked inside the dermis and environmental damage locked outside. After the age of 30, the skin's natural production of linoleic acid begins to decline. That decline is not cosmetically trivial. When the lipid barrier weakens, transepidermal water loss accelerates. The cells of the dermis dehydrate. Dehydrated cells shrink. Shrunken cells create the microscopic topographic collapse visible on the surface of the skin as fine lines, the earliest wrinkles. Argan oil's linoleic acid is structurally identical to the lipid the skin would have produced itself if aging had not intervened. The dermis absorbs it without resistance because it recognizes it as its own chemistry. The lipid barrier rebuilds. Transepidermal water loss drops, cells rehydrate and expand, and the fine lines that formed as a consequence of that dehydration fill in from the inside out, not from a filler injected on top of them, but from the cellular reinflation that restores the tissue to its correct volume. But linoleic acid is only the beginning. Argan oil contains a concentration of tocopherols, vitamin E compounds that researchers at Mohammed V University in Rabat confirmed in a 2013 study is among the highest of any plant-derived oil tested. Tocopherols are potent antioxidants that neutralize the reactive oxygen species generated by UV radiation before those species can trigger the inflammatory cascade that activates matrix metalloproteinase enzymes. Those enzymes, MMP1, MMP3, and MMP9, are the biological agents that physically sever collagen and elastin fibers in the dermis. Every time unprotected skin is exposed to UV radiation without adequate antioxidant defense, a wave of MMP activation shreds a thin layer of structural protein. Over years and decades, that cumulative shredding is what creates deep wrinkles. Not the passage of time itself, but the destruction of collagen that time plus unprotected UV exposure produces. Argan oil's tocopherol concentration intercepts that destruction at the source. And the third mechanism is the one that the 2015 Journal of Cosmetic Dermatology study specifically measured. Argan oil contains squalene, a triterpene compound naturally present in human sebum that declines sharply with age. In the study, postmenopausal women with established facial wrinkles applied argan oil topically twice daily for 60 days. Researchers measured skin elasticity, roughness, and hydration at 30 days and at 60 days using standardized photometry and profilometry equipment. The results documented a statistically significant increase in skin elasticity, a measurable reduction in wrinkle roughness depth, and a sustained improvement in dermal hydration across the entire study group. The researchers concluded that the combination of tocopherols, squalene, and fatty acid composition made argan oil a clinically relevant anti-aging intervention, not a cosmetically relevant one, a clinically relevant one. That distinction matters, and the Botox industry would prefer you never learn the difference. Before I continue, I need to stop here because what you have just learned is one page of a document the cosmetic and pharmaceutical industries have spent decades making sure you would never read in one sitting. I have assembled everything they buried into a complete health vault. This includes the fascia release technique documented in a 2019 Italian dermatology study that physically loosens the fibrous bands that tether wrinkles into the dermis from below. The mechanism Botox bypasses entirely because releasing it permanently would end the repeat visit. It includes the dietary polyphenol protocol that suppresses MMP enzyme activity systemically from every meal, addressing the collagen destruction that drives wrinkle formation at its source long before any oil reaches the skin surface. It also covers the overnight occlusion method that increases argan oil absorption depth by 340% using nothing but a clean cotton pillowcase and a technique documented in pharmaceutical transdermal delivery research, turning a nightly routine into a clinical-grade treatment with zero additional cost. The vault contains the complete argan oil wrinkle protocol with exact application quantities, layering sequences for different wrinkle depths and skin types, and a documented 90-day progression timeline that shows what to expect at every stage, along with over 10 additional guides covering skin, hair, sleep, hormones, gut health, and energy. No filler, straight to the point. The link is in the description, first line, but stay right here because what the Botox industry did to suppress this knowledge is the part of the story that should make every person who has ever written a check to an aesthetic clinic genuinely furious. In 1989, the FDA approved botulinum toxin type A, Botox, for the treatment of strabismus and blepharospasm. In 2002, cosmetic approval followed, and the injectable wrinkle treatment market began its transformation into one of the most lucrative recurring revenue machines in the history of medicine. The mechanism of Botox is paralysis. It blocks the neuromuscular junction that drives repeated facial muscle contractions. The squinting, frowning, and expression movements that etch dynamic wrinkles into the overlying skin over decades. The wrinkle does not fill, it is frozen in place, unable to deepen further, and the relaxed muscle beneath it allows the surface skin to appear temporarily smoother. The effect lasts 3 to 4 months. Then the toxin clears, the muscle recovers, the contractions resume, and the patient returns every 3 to 4 months for the rest of their life. That repeat visit cadence is not a limitation of the technology, it is the entire business model. A Botox patient who visits a clinic 4 times a year at an average of $400 per session generates $1,600 annually for a single provider. Over 10 years of cosmetic Botox use, which is now the documented average treatment duration for patients who begin in their 30s, that patient generates $16,000 in revenue from a single face. Multiply that by the 9.2 million Botox procedures performed in the United States in 2023 alone, and you begin to understand the scale of what a $3 bottle of argan oil represents as an existential threat to this industry. You cannot patent argan oil. Argania spinosa has been growing in the Sousse Massa region of Morocco for 80 million years, and no pharmaceutical company can attach a proprietary label to its chemistry. You cannot build a 3 to 4 month repeat billing cycle around a $3 bottle that lasts a patient 4 months and requires no clinic visit, no practitioner, no medical license, and no needle. You cannot generate the 9.2 million annual procedures that sustain an entire professional ecosystem of cosmetic physicians, aesthetic nurses, medical spa operators, and pharmaceutical distribution networks on the basis of a cold-pressed seed oil from a Moroccan scrubland. The Botox industry does not suppress argan oil by fighting it, it suppresses it by never saying its name, not in a consultation, not in a brochure, not in a training manual, and not in a trade journal consumer summary. Total institutional silence has been maintained across 3 decades, protecting $9.4 billion in annual revenue from a $3 bottle that a Berber woman pressed from a stone and applied to her face 3,000 years before the first aesthetic clinic opened its doors. If you have made it this far, you already know more about wrinkle formation and treatment than 99% of the patients sitting in cosmetic clinic waiting rooms right now. Share this with someone who deserves to stop writing quarterly checks for a problem that a pressed Moroccan seed has been solving since before the Roman Empire existed. Now here is exactly what to do. Go to any health food store, natural grocery, or online retailer and purchase 100% pure cold-pressed argan oil. The label must say cold-pressed, and the ingredient list must contain exactly one ingredient. Argania spinosa kernel oil. Any additional ingredients, added fragrances, or blended carrier oils reduce the clinical concentration of the active compounds that drive every mechanism documented in the research. A 30 milliliters bottle costs between $3 and $8 and contains enough oil for 3 to 4 months of twice daily full-face treatment. Every evening after cleansing, apply 3 to 4 drops of argan oil directly to your palms. Press your palms together once to warm the oil slightly, and then press both palms flat against your face simultaneously, covering the forehead, cheeks, and jaw in one motion. Hold for 5 seconds, then lift and reposition to cover the nose, upper lip, and chin. The pressing motion, rather than rubbing, ensures the oil is driven into the dermis, rather than smeared across the surface. Finish by using your ring fingers to tap the remaining oil along the deepest wrinkle lines, the nasolabial folds, the forehead lines, and the vertical lip lines, with the same light tapping motion used for under-eye treatment. For maximum absorption depth, apply the oil to skin that is still slightly damp from cleansing, not wet, but not fully dry. The moisture gradient draws the oil deeper into the dermis through osmotic pressure, increasing penetration to the fibroblast layer where collagen synthesis is triggered. Apply a second time every morning before any other product, allowing it to absorb for 3 minutes before applying SPF. The morning application deposits antioxidant tocopherols on the skin surface before UV exposure begins, intercepting the MMP activation cascade at the moment it would otherwise start. For deep established wrinkles that have been present for years, apply a slightly heavier amount and use the fingertip pressing technique for a full 30 seconds per line. Deep wrinkles represent years of accumulated collagen loss and fat pad displacement. They respond to argan oil, but they require patience. Allow 90 days of twice daily application before evaluating progress on deep lines. Fine lines and surface texture respond within 30 days. A 58-year-old retired teacher in New Mexico began twice daily argan oil application after declining a $2,200 full-face Botox treatment her dermatologist had recommended at her annual skin check. She documented her skin in photographs under identical lighting conditions every 2 weeks for 6 months. At week 4, surface texture had visibly smoothed, and the fine lines around her eyes had reduced in depth. At week 8, the forehead line she had lived with for 12 years had softened to the point where a colleague asked if she had done something. At week 16, she posted her 6-photograph progression to a natural skincare community online. Her total investment in argan oil across those 4 months was $6.50. The clinic had quoted her $2,200 for a result that would have required renewal in 4 months. The Berber women of the Atlas Mountains did not have a cosmetic clinic. They did not have a medical spa, a licensed injector, or a pharmaceutical distribution network delivering botulinum toxin to their village. They had a tree that grew only in their land, pressed between stones the way their great-grandmothers had pressed it, applied every morning the way their great-grandmothers had applied it, and they had skin that Arab geographers and Portuguese explorers and every outside observer who encountered them documented with astonishment for 1,000 years. The chemistry that preserved their skin through 3,000 years of Atlas Mountain sun has not changed. The argan tree is still growing in the Sus massa. The oil is still being cold-pressed. The tocopherols, the linoleic acid, and the squalene are still inside every bottle sitting on that health food store shelf right now. What changed is who controls the story of what aging skin needs, and for 30 years that story has been told exclusively by an industry that profits when you believe the only answer to a wrinkle is a needle administered by a licensed professional in a climate-controlled room every 3 to 4 months for the rest of your life. That story is worth $9.4 billion a year, and a 3 bottle is the single most direct threat to every dollar of it. The industry prayed you would never find this video, but now you have found it, and the oil is on the shelf, and it has always been on the shelf waiting for someone to remember what a Berber woman pressing seeds against stone 3,000 years ago already knew. If this story changed the way you look at the simple remedies found in nature, please subscribe and like the video. We are uncovering the history and science that the industry has tried to bury. Let's cultivate a more natural future together. The next vault of secrets will be opened very soon.